Good morning, everybody. And maybe Mohan, we could do, maybe one thing we could do to try to change things up is, because I see people log in a little early. Maybe we can do like an Ask Me Anything 5 minutes before class starts. No, a bad idea. Okay. I just, it would be nice to reward people or have a little bit of fun because before we get into the business of class.
Ask the professor anything. They should not be TALS.
Ask the professor anything within some bounds, right? I can give a list of safe topics. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's try to end a little early today because the weather is beautiful outside. So let's hopefully, if we can give you all a few minutes to go enjoy the day outside, you'll again remember that during class eval times. All right, Mohan, start off with our tip of the day, please.
Yeah, so today's tip of the day is something I got as a tip recently from a Google recruiter. So when you're discussing HCI related projects or UX related projects with recruiters in company, they are looking for not what you did. It's basically why you did it. And so, for example, if you did a focus group and if you did a survey, then they want to know why did you choose that method to collect that information? Why not other methods? Like there are interviews, there are other ways to collect information, and why, and what are the drawbacks of that method, and what are the benefits of using that method? And when you chose that method, what did you compromise for? What were the things that you said, okay, this is not what I'm going to get, but it's fine, it benefits my project? And what were those things? And if you could sum that up nicely when you're interviewing with companies, I think you will be a good candidate for them.
That's a great tip, Mohan. Great tip. And I think it's that concept, Mohan, of taking a step back. It's not the what, but the why. And so when you read HCI research papers too, you want to be thinking the why behind that, right? Because it's unlikely anybody's going to replicate exactly that same study. You're not going to get the same population, right? That's near impossible. So the way you advance the field is by explaining and learning from the why of what of that, and the decisions that were both good and bad. It's because we can also learn from things that don't work out. Okay, all right. Mohan, can you remind people for Monday? We're changing it up a little bit next week. We're trying to make next week a little bit of a less stressful, fewer meetings week, and try to reduce some of the required in-class stuff. So can you help us remember for Monday, what do people need to submit?
Yeah, so it should be a video, a 3-minute video. And this is not graded. This is the opportunity for you to get feedback. And if you're stuck somewhere, it's an opportunity to get feedback from both me and Dr. Locke. And within that video, we're looking for like what has been already done. Like I'm assuming you have started implementing the system. We want to see how much you have proceeded, how much have you succeeded in that. And once you show that, then we need to see what is the next highest priority item for you. So maybe you have proposed a interface which has like several different things you need to implement. We want to see what's the next thing that you're planning to implement, so that we would evaluate, we could help you give feedback on like if this is the right thing to prioritize on. And the third is the most important part, like where are you looking feedback on? There might be some parts where you might want to, for example, it can be as simple as identifying the priority for the next interface. So if you're looking for that kind of feedback, let us know. We can provide you in that. Those are the 3 things.
Great. And so what we're going to do on Monday is you do not have to attend class. You can if you want, it's optional. But Mohan and I will be going through the videos and giving feedback. And since it's being recorded, the recording is usually posted within an hour or two, so you can go back in and watch your recording. So this is an opportunity for you all to get feedback, an opportunity for you to, if you all want to meet as a group, so to save yourself a meeting time, this would also be a good time. You can meet during the class time. That's great. If you want to join here and then jump to a breakout room, we can set that up for you, no problem. Okay, so that's Monday. And then we're gonna have an activity on Wednesday, right, Mohan?
Right.
And then Friday, what was our plan?
So we are planning to make this Friday as optional attendance, and you don't have to attend. You will be watching those videos and giving your feedback remotely whenever you get time, but you can choose to skip the class on that day.
Or better yet, you use that as a time to meet as a group, so you don't have some other meeting you have to schedule some other time later. Okay, so we're trying to give you a couple days next week to reduce the number of meetings you have to attend, and also give you more time in class if you want to meet as a group. And maybe we might start building in a little bit of that time, Mohan, in future weeks too. Okay, just to give, since everybody's here and they already have their time blocked off. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Yes, one more thing. Go ahead.
Just a reminder, I still need 8 people's input on permission for releasing videos. It's permission to release your in-class activity on Friday on class websites so that you can refer it when in your job interviews. So if you approve or deny, please fill it so that, and remember, like if one of the member denies it, we cannot post the whole video. So I would need feedback from all of you on this survey.
All right, thanks, Mohan. All right, let's go ahead and jump into it. Let's go to the first group, room 1.
Okay, so I'll be sharing for the room 1. Okay, so our story revolves around a person who is named Peter, and he wants to eat like different dishes, but does not know how to cook those dishes. He doesn't know the recipes for those. So what he does is he asks his roommate Alex about different dishes he wants to eat, but same thing, Alex also doesn't know how to cook those dishes. But Alex gives him a suggestion to ask Alexa, the voice assistant we would like to build. And then he said, in the next frame we'll go, and he says it's a good idea about that. So he asked Alexa about, hey, do you know how to make falafel, which is a dish he wants to eat? And Alexa replies, sure, here's the recipe for that, and I'll walk you along the recipe. So this picture follows the guideline 1, telling the user what the voice assistant can do. So here the voice assistant is telling it can walk him along the recipes as he cooks dishes one step at a time. So here the voice assistant tells the step 1 is to boil the chickpeas in the saucepan for like 5 minutes. Next step is the user says, okay, I'm done with boiling. So what's next? So Alexa instantly gives him the second step, that is mash the boiled chickpeas. Okay, so now the catch. He wants a grinder to mash the chickpeas. So he asks his roommates, "Hey Alex, do you know where the mixer grinder is?" But Alexa suddenly invocates due to wrong invocation, but also follows guideline number 7 that says, "Hey." He correctly identifies the problem and says, "Sorry, I don't know how to do that. Do you want me to give you the next step? That is step 3." Okay, so after that is complete, he says, Alexa, I'm done with step 2. What's next? Alexa says, okay, add some salt and you're good to go with your recipes. So all along these lines, Alexa kept in mind the previous interactions with the users. So thereby following guideline number 12 as well.
All right. Yeah, so I think that it's an interesting concept of to try to use an AI agent that doesn't have any visual appearance, right? Because I think that's one of the challenges whenever you have a voice only assistant, and there a lot of the guidelines really have to come into play, because yes, there are Alexa with Echo Spot, for example, with the visual component, but there are a lot that just have the voice. So how do you design guidelines? How do you design an experience so that you have different modalities and you can still, sometimes you can show people something, sometimes you can't. So I think that it's a good idea. You really incorporated different ideas about how do you support different ways people can interact with different modality devices. So that's the thing that I really want to point out about your storyboard is different modalities, because how you would do that same scenario if you had a visual display on the Alexa would also change things up, right? So you would say, hey, I know I can show these elements. I know I can get feedback in this way. This one you have to rely on voice. And so if you're to build that skill for Alexa, you really have to think about how could different modalities play out that way. So I think that's why I think having strong guidelines that can help ensure that you're checking yourself is a good step. So good job. All right.
Thanks.
All right, group two.
I'll be sharing for group two. Let me go ahead and pull up our story. Okay. Our story is about a user who's looking to find new music to listen to, specifically at the gym. So our application is like syncing their music with their calendar. So basically, when they have this 4 p.m. gym calendar event, based on the calendar events, it's going to change the music recommendations that it gives the person based on like both their own personal preferences and the calendar event, in this case the gym. And then once they leave the gym and like that calendar event is over, then they get a new playlist that's different. In this case, it can be like a driving one or one that's like a transitional one. And you can see on the calendar too, they have like a study event. So then presumably at 8 p.m. now study music would start playing instead. So this follows the guidelines about giving contextual information based on like the calendar events, both the location and like the time of day. And then it also notifies the user when those changes are being made and why they're being made, which is another guideline to help the user follow like the decisions that the AI is making.
Okay, so I think
pretty much it.
Okay, so I think one of the things that really comes to mind when I'm seeing your storyboards is when you see these guidelines, it allows your group to take a look. It gives your team a way to look at a heuristic. Hey, are we following these guidelines? And really think about ways to evaluate whether you've done it, right? And I think that that's one of when you think about HCI, what is the value of HCI? Why do we write research papers and do studies? It's to come up with these guidelines. Now, guidelines are different than, for example, an algorithm that you might have in another domain. Why is that? Because you have to evaluate, your team has to evaluate for your domain, which of these guidelines make sense. So it isn't that you have to have every single element on the guideline list, right? That isn't the goal. The goal isn't to say, if I have done 6, it's better than doing 5. No, it's to say, hey, let's go through each one. Let's evaluate whether we've implemented this. Does this make sense for our team? And think about this. If you were to add a new person to your team, how could you ensure that that person knew what the goals of the team were? Well, guidelines provide that for you, right? So that's a really good point. So I like your application, and I like that you're constantly, again, letting people know what's going on, so that whenever there are changes, there's an HCI concept called Locus of Control, and it asks the user, how much do you feel you are in control of the system, right? Or do you feel that the system just makes all the decisions for you? And so one of the golden rules is to look at locus of control and making sure the user feels that they have control. So that's really powerful. All right, let's go on to group 3. Thank you.
I'll be presenting for group 3. Okay. So basically this is a character, and our app is, it helps people find recipes and cook in the kitchen. So she's vegan, but like different people might have different dietary needs. some people might be lactose intolerant, and some people might be vegan, so they have to mention it every time when they're looking for recipes. So this is our UI. It's called Intelligent Cook. You can ask it for any kind of recipes, and you can also share your requirements. So here, like, she has started using it. She asked the UI, "Hey, Intelligent Cook, can you help me with cooking pizza?" And it says, "Sure." It's looking up results. Then it gives her options, like if she wants a chicken pizza, or she wants a cheese pizza, or she wants a vegan pizza. And she tells the assistant that she's vegan, and she wants to see the vegan pizza recipe. So the next time that she uses the interface, she asks for pancake recipes, and it automatically gives her recipes for vegan pancakes because she gave her that input. So yeah, that's IUI.
Okay. Some feedback there is if the interface let the user know how they remembered, hey, I remember you told me that you were vegan, so I'm going to show you vegan recipes, right? So there you're giving insight. That's one of the things I would throw in there, is to let the AI needs to demonstrate to the user what it knows. That's a very important point. That's a big part of understandable AI. That's a big movement, because again, think about this back to locus control, HCI. AI made huge leaps forward, deep learning, all that stuff, and humans don't understand how the AI comes to different solutions, right? You pour all this stuff in, you shake up the box, and then magically stuff comes out the other side. Like it can recognize an image on the screen, but it doesn't know, but humans don't know why. So you want to start thinking from the user perspective to let them understand why something happened, right? An example that a person who worked with Amazon Fire on their Fire TV said to me, when they were designing the interface for that, if you were to ask Amazon Fire to play Chicago, right? For those of you who might not be familiar, Chicago is both a movie and a band, okay? So he said, well, we had to think about, how do you solve that problem? Well, he said, well, we designed the interface so that if you were to ask Amazon, hey, play Chicago, what it would do, it would say, ask you, do you mean the band or the movie? Now, why is that very important? Because A, it lets you know that there are two different choices, and it's not going to try to guess for you. And then B, it's going to train you, so the next time you ask, you're not going to just say, play Chicago. You'll actually say, play Chicago, the movie. Okay, so it's always, you want to give people a little bit more insight into why decisions happen, especially with AI. Okay, all right, let's move on to the next.
Thanks for feedback.
Yep. Yeah, thanks. That's a good point. If you can keep your screen up, that'd be great.
All right, hello. I'll present for group 4. So our storyboard is based on song recommendations, namely the problem of a user listening to music on Spotify, but they have no real way to tell Spotify that they don't like or like the recommended song. We've all seen like likes and dislike buttons before, but if you, for example, look at this Spotify user interface, I'm looking at the recommended daily music for me, and I really have no way of doing anything except for just like the song. I could skip it, but that doesn't really make it very clear that I don't like the song that they give me. And so one of the basic suggestions that we can do is just freely inform Spotify the song is not what they want with a simple up and down vote button. And for example, this really exhibits guidelines 9 and 13, where we're correcting the AI, making it easy to edit and refine, and also personalizing that experience by learning their actions over time. And secondly, we want to avoid this problem in the future, right? For other users who are using the system. And so if you have a system where you can also, if you're asked, would you recommend the song to a listener of this genre? Using the same kind of system, you can also prevent this happening to others so that this doesn't happen in the first place. And so hopefully using guideline 15, where we encourage granular feedback, we can help the AI indicate preferences, or we can indicate preferences to the AI. And hopefully the outcome coming from this is that we have some user in a far off land now, where everybody's happy, we're getting the music that we like and the recommendations that we want. And that is our presentation.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess there is a hide this song button on certain playlists and daily mixes. So
There are, but
yeah.
it's also kind of difficult to get to. And even
It
looking
is.
at some of the cues that you have queued up, you have to like click 2 or 3 buttons to even find it. And I didn't even know some things existed until yesterday.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I think the thing that you're talking about here is really giving the person control. And that's why I go back to that locus of control conversation that I had earlier. That's such an important part about HCI and about interfaces. When you're designing interfaces, giving people so they feel that they have got control of what they're experiencing is very, very important, because some people like it, that the system will just take care of everything and they don't really care to let the system know. So that's low locus of control. That's fine with that. But high locus of control people who want to set all the settings, for example, can get very, very frustrated if you don't give folks that power. So I think really studying your users to understand whether they require that locus of control is going to be important. That's a good tip also for a lot of you who, when you're designing your project for this class, is when you're interviewing your folks, your potential users, your end users, ask them how much control are they expecting from your interface, from your experience. Okay.
Is the best advice in that case to just kind of get the average case and just kind of hope that it'll match everybody up, or give everybody options to modify themselves? I guess that's like the UI principle that I'm wondering.
So that's a great question. There are actual locus of control questionnaires that you can apply, and I would not try to do an average. Averages don't really make much sense, right? So if you got 4 people who don't care and 4 people who care a lot, doing it in the middle doesn't help anybody, right? So really you have to, so what you think about there is having, from a business perspective, customer segmentation. So you got 2 segments of the market, right? And so if you've, that goes beyond what you need for this class, but I'm just explaining what you would try to do. So if you have a segment that really needs that control, you need to ask yourself, how big is that segment? Is it worth capturing to design enough interface to support that? So I would not do an average. Again, averages you can serve no one. You can feel good, but serve no one. And so you really want to study your users. And there's a group that needs it, then you have to provide enough support for that group, or you're not really going to reach them. Okay, but there are locus of control surveys that are out there. All right, go ahead. And good job of tying in the guidelines. I really like that you tied in the guidelines so people know which decisions that you've made, because you can show that to another team and other teams can give you feedback on that. So that's good. All right, let's move on. We're on group 5, right? All right, thanks.
Yeah, so our group also went with a cooking assistant app tailored towards if you know what type of food you want, but don't know exactly what you want to cook. So for ours, in the first box, the person feels like having Mexican food tonight, but they don't know what they want and how to cook it. So they use the cooking assistant app and ask it to give them a Mexican food recipe. And with that, it asks them if they would like to make tacos or burritos, and they pick tacos. And then from there, it asks, would they like to make it with beef, chicken, or vegetarian? And they choose vegetarian. And so from then it'd give you the ingredients on how to make it and what you need to make it. And then later that week, they want some Italian food, but don't know what they'd like to order, or like what they would like to make. So then they use the app again, and it would, when they ask it for an Italian dish to make it, it recommends a veggie pasta for them based off their last suggestion, their last choice of having vegetarian Mexican food. And so for ours, we were using the guideline 10, where when it suggests like beef, chicken, or vegetarian, what kind of meat you want. And then 12 and 13, where it remembers your last interactions, and it learns from the user behavior of what they kind of like to eat.
Okay. I think there again, there's an opportunity for the system to let you know what it did and why, right? And the other thought that comes to mind is, because oftentimes whenever you make, you learn and make optimized decisions, you think that you're always helping. There are times when these systems don't always make the right decisions for you. You need to find ways for folks to be able to sort of reverse some of those choices. I'll give you an example. So I have Spotify, and I listen to music on it. My kids also like Spotify. Before they created a Spotify Kids account, they would use my account. And so at the end of the year, on my end of the year playlist, I had a lot of kids theme songs that were on there. First, it was like Thomas the Tank Engine, then it was Battle Bots or whatever that crazy thing is. Anyways, and I could never undo it. So every now and again, I'd be out for a run, and then I'd have some kids theme song come on, right? So there, and I say that because yes, it learned because it found patterns, but sometimes those patterns aren't something that I want, and you need to provide ways for me to undo what the system has shown me. So sometimes it's great that the system's learning, but the user needs to have some control over what data it takes to learn from. Okay, all right, let's move on to the next one.
Hi, we are Team 6, and the voice is the AI interface that we built to help users cook their favorite recipe is called Genie. In the framework, we've just introduced our scenario here. The boy asks the mother if she can cook him white chocolate cheesecake. As the mom is not aware about the recipe, she asks Alexa for the recipe. And in the frame 2, we've introduced found the problem in the existing system where often interfaces misunderstand the request made by the user and execute the request without giving a confirmation. So which might put off the user at times. So we have introduced our Genie in the second app where the friend comes and suggests our app. And so we have developed an improved interface by prioritizing guidelines G2 and G10, where G2 making it clear how well our interface understands. As you can see, our interface would ask, is that what you're looking for? To confirm what the recipe is. And G10 is providing extra suggestions such as, do you want to make white chocolate cheesesteak or white chocolate cheesecake, by giving them suggestions. I think these are the two things that we prioritized on.
Okay, yeah, I'm struggling a little bit to understand this application and how it's actually working from the storyboard. So I understand that it's trying to manage folks, trying to manage situations where there could be misunderstanding or errors in inputs. I think that's interesting, but how that's tied to the application and so I'm struggling with that. So the feedback I would give you is to say, I think trying to more clearly explain how this application is going to solve this. I think the storyboard is the part that I'm struggling with, about trying to say, here's how this actually plays within the story, because you've got a scene across the top where people are in a kitchen, and then you've got, I'm guessing, screenshots of things out of the bottom. So I'm a little thrown off there. I'll need to take some more time to think about it.
I think
Go ahead, Mohan.
Yeah, one of the main thing about storyboard is about the sequence. It gives you the timeline, and that timeline is broken here. Like, it's difficult to understand what are the sequence of events happening. So that's the point that's missing here.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to room 7.
Okay, I'm presenting for group 7. So our content or our app was for like solving people that are having like low activity. So in our storyboard, our character is Mike, who is working from home, and he spends a lot of the day just sitting, and he's trying to now improve his exercise routine. But a problem that he's had before is that it'll notify him typically when he's already doing something else. So he'll swipe it away and then forget about it later. So Mike then goes out and finds like an activity tracker watch that alerts him when he's like inactive to remind him when to work out. So in the second, that's our product. So in terms of the guidelines, the first one we used was G3. So it bases your use based off like the time of contact. So this smartwatch will notice that he's like not doing anything, he's not working, it's time to take a break, you know, so it'll notify him to go for a walk and send that notification. And then we also incorporated G13 to have the AI learn from previous behavior. So now the watch will know, like, oh, well, Mike usually has time in the mornings, so that's when it'll notify him rather than asking him during the day when he's working. So then that will improve his activity in the future.
Okay, so I think this is, this is really good to think about knowing context. I had a smartwatch at one time that would detect when I wasn't moving and would say, you need to go for, it would say inactive for, every 30 minutes, but it would go off whenever I was flying. So it's, and that made me promptly turn it off. I was like, that's stupid. And I turned off that thing because it buzzed my hand every 30 minutes for a 4-hour flight. And I was, up against the window. I'm not going to go walk around the plane every time. So I think having the idea of context, I think is really, really good, because that's where you said, and not typing anything, saying not typing anything. So understanding your environment. I think there, again, there's an opportunity for the system to also let the user know a little bit more about why it's suggesting certain things. So I think that, but otherwise, I also like that you put there, he seemed to get really ripped from just a little use of this app. So I'm all for, I need this app myself for this quick turnaround. But I do like that you're also letting him, Mike, learn how he's doing and trying to challenge himself to do more. I think that that's also back to catering to some users who like to see progress. And if you ever play video games and you're a completionist, for example, you see you're playing on that same sort of cognitive component too. So that's good. Okay. All right, let's move on.
So I will be sharing for my group. All right, so in our scenario, there's people at the gym. One of the guys says, none of these songs are good for jogging. So a friend points out, hey, I have this great app, play songs based on your activity level. So the concept is that it time service based on your context. So if you're cycling and your heart rate's at such and such a rate, it might play one song. So like if you're doing HIT test or HIT training, it might decide you play Rage Over the Lost Penny, because that's got some nice tempo, speed up, slow down, speed up, slow down. Or if you're in the cool down phase, it might play some Chopin, because we're really into, we know what the kids want to listen to these days. And then also it will learn from the user's behavior, so that if they might not like the song selection, or they might want to change the song selection, it gives them the option to go ahead and select different songs, skip over ones, and adjust what it's playing. And so we'll take your money now. Thank you.
Spotify actually had one of the channels was based on beats per minute. So there was one, and there was also a mode that it had where it would recognize how many steps per minute that you were already running at, and it would choose music that matched your cadence. So that was actually the feature that got me hooked on Spotify, because I do a lot of long distance running. And so you're supposed to keep a certain cadence. It tends to fall off, but people know research-wise that music can alter your cadence. And so that was an interesting way. Yeah, I think that's something Adidas does with Spotify. So there are ways to, yes, adapt the music to things. I think that part is really great. And I think that the other part that I like about your storyboard is it appears to be showing the user that information, right? And I think that that's also something important to let people know, again, not only why, hey, look, I'm playing this music, but also why, so you can change things up. So learning from users' behavior, I think that's good. I think trying to provide ways, again, to let people adjust whether that information, because sometimes I go running with my My kids, it's very different than when I go run them by myself, right? So I'd like to be able to tune out certain things because they're just there. I don't have the same goals every time I'm cycling, for example, right? Or if I'm even doing a HIT class, it could be with a different goal in mind, or I'm with my friend or something else. So, okay, all right, let's go ahead and move on.
All right, so I'll be presenting for group 9. We decided to storyboard an activity tracker as well. And so our two characters here, we can just call them Jack and Jill. So Jack is, working today, and he realizes, man, I'm tired. I've been sitting at my desk all day. Maybe I should do something. And he notices Jill across from him looks at her fit watch and notices that it's time to go on a walk. And her watch keeps her notified every hour or so of when she should, get up and move. So Jack asks her, how does it keep an eye on your activity? And so it basically just keeps her updated on how long it's been since she's moved around, and keeps an eye on all of her like vital signs. And so that's G3 in this slide right here. The time service is based on context. So essentially when, hasn't been moving in a long time, it alerts. And then we also decided to use guideline G4 for showing contextually relevant information to motivate the user to basically see that their heart rate has been lower over the last hour, or however much time it's been since they last were active. And essentially just different metrics that could be displayed to show that you haven't been active and to motivate you to get up and do something. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of research that I would recommend that if this were a real team that wanted to build this sort of application to understand from a health communication perspective, how do you get people to become healthy? There are some people who respond well to, hey, you haven't been moving. Why don't you get moving? And there are some people that turns them off, right? So being told that I'm inactive doesn't necessarily get certain people out of the chair. So I think thinking about how you want to phrase those messages and what information you'd want to do, you'd have to really understand what that user responds well to. Okay, so that'd be the feedback to give on just presenting people with information, right? So again, is it the stick or the carrot? Some people respond well to sticks, some people respond well to carrots. So another way to make that a carrot is to say, hey, if you go for a walk now, you're going to reach your goal. Right? As opposed to, hey, you haven't been walking, so get up. So depending on who you are, so you have to think about user profiles and studying what the user would respond well to. And that could actually be something that the AI could learn from too. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, good morning. I'll be presenting for room 10. So the topic we went with was the scenario of someone wanting to cook a recipe using a voice assistant. So here we present our scenario where Tom is asking his friend Jerry that he wants to cook something nice for his grandparents, but he doesn't have much experience with cooking. Jerry makes a suggestion that he can use the phone's voice assistant to help guide him through the cooking process, and he can come up with something delicious. So the first thing that our application does is follow G5 in that it addresses Tom following the relevant social norms. It has a formal tone in conversation. In the first scenario here, we're focusing on G11 and G10 at the same time. In that, when Tom asks the assistant, hey, I want to cook something nice, but I'm not very experienced with cooking, it's taking into account it's letting Tom know that here's a list of beginner friendly recipes. So it's making the information through that these are beginner friendly, and thus also providing a list of recipes also gives a scope for services and options to the user to select which recipe they would want to go with. Moving on from there, we shift the focus on to G4, where the application also suggests that here's the list of ingredients you'll need for the recipe you've chosen.
In case you're missing any of these ingredients because the app doesn't know if the user has everything at home, you can find them at a nearby grocery store. So it's providing context relevant clues. Finally, it's focusing on G3 in that it's giving timely reminders to the user. Hey, maybe it's time to increase the temperature. It's time to remove stuff from the fridge so that it can periodically, keep nudging the user in the right direction. Another thing which is not storyboarded here, but in the long term, we could follow G13 is that once the app realizes that maybe the user's taking a longer time to chop up vegetables than the recipe suggests, it can adjust the time it takes before nudging so that it's understanding the user's expertise level and taking that into account in the suggestions they make.
Okay. Yeah, I like that you focus on things such as beginner friendly ways, little cues and clues that the system can provide the user, that it's understanding what the user is needing at the moment, right? I would consider, for example, in slide 5, it is time to increase the oven. I mean, you could possibly phrase it in a way that sees whether the user needs a reminder, right? So anyways, so overall, I think good job. I just kind of have a general question. We got a few minutes before left. Is how many people here have used an app or tried to use a voice assistant to cook something? Can I just get a show of hands on this? Because I just wanted to I'm rather surprised that this has been a very common app, potential application here. All right, so you have tried using an app, a voice assistant to try to cook before. But anybody want to explain? Just kind of talk us through what did you try to cook and how did it go for you? How would you improve the interface? We just need one person. And then class is over.
Like I was like trying to just see how to boil potatoes. Actually, I don't know that also. So I asked my Google Assistant like how to boil potatoes, and it showed me like you need 2 potatoes and put that in a pressure cooker. Like you have to put water. Like it described me what to do, but it didn't tell me it didn't reminded me periodically that you have to do this now, and that sort of thing.
Okay, so did you actually follow the instructions? How did the potatoes turn out?
Yeah, so like they were not very good, but yeah, they were like eatable, not very bad.
Okay, they were edible on there. Okay, I asked because this is an application that I would have guessed that same request could have been a Google search on your phone, right? So is the novelty of actually speaking aloud the words really buying you that much in the moment, right? So again, I think when folks create a lot of these applications, one note I would have is, would people use a simpler interface, right? So that is something to always be thinking about. I mean, are you over engineering something too? Because if you wanted to cook something, is the voice assistant the way to go? Now, if you're in the middle of cooking and your hands are tied because you're doing something, absolutely. The voice assistant is great because you can ask how many ounces of water in a cup, or how many teaspoons make a tablespoon, and those sort of things. And yes, it guiding you along with something would probably be useful at the time. So just thinking about what I always say, try to build for the simplest interface possible, because everything that you add more onto just adds complexity. You better get a good return for that complexity.
Yeah. I think like Google kind of tries to do that. Like it says that at least Google Assistant does that. I'm sending you some stuff on your phone. You can check it out on your phone. So that's a follow-up that you can do from there.
All right. Well, that's all we have for class today. So it's a beautiful day outside. So if class is dismissed, hopefully you'll get some time to head on out and enjoy it. Reminder, next week on Friday, you just need to send the video. It's for you to get feedback, so it's not graded, so you don't have to make a perfect video. Mohan has given you a a chance to just quickly, I mean, giving you a structure so you can see what to include in the video. It doesn't have to be, again, they'll make pretty fades and cuts. It's not gonna be worth anything. Don't spend too much time. And then again, maybe I would also recommend talking with your group next week, since you have 2 fewer classes to attend, you want to use that time for a group meeting. Okay. All right. If nothing else, enjoy your weekend. See you folks later. Mohan and I are sticking around if you want to ask any questions.
Thank you.
Yep.
I just wanted to clarify. So the videos are due by Monday, and then what is Friday?
Friday is going to be, you'll be able to watch, because Wednesday, everybody's going to put their videos together. I mean,
Okay.
presentations together, right? Oh, Mohan, sorry.
Wednesday is the class activity, so Friday, you don't have to present like we did today. You just have to record what you did and just post it.
Okay. Okay. Just
You
double
don't have
checking.
to. Yeah.
Thanks.
Professor, on Monday, so do you have to give a demo of the mainly with the user, the UI part, or like with the backend also, like working like?
Well, okay. So what's the goal of Monday?
So I think you just want to see how much we have progressed and how the interface is shaping up.
That's one goal. There's a second goal.
Like getting a feedback.
Mm-hmm. All right. So whatever you need to do to get those 2 parts done.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Professor. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Now I know, Mohan, we have a couple groups because we wanted to talk about the project 2, right? Is this everybody that's involved with those 2 groups?
Looks like it. There's Abhiti. I remember her name, and I don't know. A group from with Abhiti, those people can start until I find the other group. So I think with Abhiti's group, when I was reviewing the project, there were 2 concerns. One was the HCI principles that are being applied. So the problem you highlighted was, I think, related to Yelp. I think, yeah, Yelp food delivery app. And the problem you're solving is not addressed by the HCI principle that you're using. You're just using HCI principles to improve the interface, and it's not exactly using those principles to solve the problem. So that was one issue that I've found, and the other was the scope of the project. So you propose several items in your project that you want to implement. One of them being listing the businesses in your app, and I wasn't sure like how you're going to do that without like without adding the fake data into the app. So those are the 2 concerns I had.
Can you bring up their document?
Yeah.
And yeah, we had the 2 groups because they're sort of a similar concern here. So, okay, this is, as I recall, this is saying, hey, we want to help folks, perhaps mainly what UF students, right, who are going to be new to the area. They want to come here, they want to eat food, but Yelp is not very catering to them, correct?
Right.
So what is the main problem? What do they struggle with?
Anyone from the group want to jump in? Abhiti, Arman, or Yagya? They left.
Okay. This isn't working out.
Yeah, Abhiti.
Would you prefer to discuss the other group first in case they take a little bit to get back?
Yeah, we can move to second group. I think feedback is the same for both groups.
Right.
So this, can you guys describe like what were you guys doing until I find your documentation?
Right. So we had started off with the problem of lengthy and fluff-filled articles on a lot of websites that are there these days, and we were trying to find a better way to allow the users to consume the information in those articles in comparison with some of the existing solutions. So as in our initial pitch as well, I remember Dr. Locke mentioned that we had looked at existing solutions of summarizers and stuff. So we looked at some of those and we felt we could make certain improvements and apply some Hci principles in a little better manner. That's at a broad level what we were trying to do, and we saw some of the feedback that you gave us, and since then we have tried to internally discuss, maybe we didn't do the best job in describing how we were planning to apply at least a certain some of those principles, and we've tried to look at that and maybe can speak to those, but we would love to get if you have any specific concerns, we would love to
Yeah.
know those as well.
Can you just start off with stating what is the problem? And maybe, okay, so I think one of the concerns that I have, and it's perhaps caused a lot of confusion in the group. So, I talk about what's wrong with the current interface. Let me rephrase it. What is the problem the users are struggling with?
Right. So based on when we interviewed our focus group, you could say, so the primary issues we identified were that when people try to consume news articles these days, there is just way too much fluff text in those articles. It's often very clickbaity, and before you get to the relevant information, there's a lot of flavor text just to fill up content. So people don't usually enjoy that. That was the main concern uh, that we were trying to address. Additionally, what some people presented that out of our focus group, only a couple had tried existing solutions for these, like summarization. So the two popular apps were TLDR and Auto Highlight. And then our users provided feedback on what they found was not particularly great about them. In the case of TLDR, it being just a pop-up that presents a summary. So yeah, it's a textual summary that they get, but they lose the context of if there's any other supportive information in the article, because these days you'll often see, this is a related tweet or these are images from that incident, but that summary in a pop-up doesn't necessarily display those, so they can lose some supportive information. And in the case of auto highlight, the interface itself wasn't very intuitive. It was a very small button at the top. You had to repeatedly click through to cycle through options. It's highlighting text, but you're still having to scroll through the entire page in case the article is lengthy and such. So those were some of the things we got from our conversations as issues. The primary issue being make difficulty to get to relevant information, and the others being issues with existing solutions that they found in their experiences. One more piece of feedback, which might not be a direct issue, but a consistent suggestion, was that a lot of people these days consume media through auditory means. So podcasts are really popular, audiobooks are really popular. So they wanted, if it was, because they usually continue to maybe code or work and at the same time get their consumption in. So they wanted to know if there could be a text to speech or something where the summary could just be read out to them while they continue to work. So even making the consumption further easier. These were the points we highlighted from our discussions.
Okay. Yeah. So I think you're tackling a good topic, right? So I think that it's a good topic, and I'm glad that you've looked at other extensions, and I think that part's good. I think that the challenge is it's not clear how are you going to solve the problem, right? So I understand. So what I heard you say is that people are saying, hey, when I'm trying to read an article, it's taking me too much time to get to the parts that I care about, or even about, or know whether I even care about this article at all, right? It could be too fluffy, it could be clickbaity, I don't even know what it is. So if I could solve those two major issues, then I can, okay, now what are you going to apply from an HCI perspective to address those problems? Because you do what a lot of other groups do. They go, well, I'm going to do Hicks law, I'm going to do Fitts law, I'm going to do this, Snyder's golden. Of course, I said this before, of course you are. Everybody does that. Like, that's not magic.
Right.
Okay, so that's not applying a concept to solving a problem.
I understand that concern, and I think we definitely didn't do a good job in the report of describing how a certain principle is helping to solve. And maybe I can, if we have time, we thought about that a little bit, and maybe I can speak to it.
That's what we wanted to do. I mean, that's why we wanted to have this meeting, is just to say, hey, more than just moving buttons around. And I understand that this button might have been small or that thing's annoying, but beyond annoying, because that doesn't really, you could still get to your goals, right? The question is, are people not able to get to their goals, and how are you going to address that? So I'd love to hear how you think about how you're going to address the core problem, as opposed to just an interface improvement.
Right. So when we thought about the issues that we heard from the people, I will say that a lot of those issues were definitely centered around the difficulty of using the interface and the shortcomings of certain interfaces. So I can't say we came up with something, completely novel in that sense. We saw shortcomings and we thought to address them. So when it got to what we learned about Fitts law and, over the course of the class, so if we look at auto highlight as an extension, like I was saying earlier, there's just one small button in the corner that's not labeled, that doesn't provide any intuitive text to the user about what it's necessarily doing. It has several levels of functionality, for instance, different levels of summaries in terms of length, but it's just a cycle through. You can't directly get to the option you wanted. And we felt that it was not applying the HCI principles well in its design. So we felt we want to provide the user with a clearly labeled, well visible set of options where the shortest amount of clicks can get them to exactly what they want if they don't have time, right?
But to think about it, if Auto Highlighter released an update tomorrow, and they tweak the interface, and they fix it, then is your stuff totally obsolete?
I guess that would be a valid concern if they chose to address their issues keeping HCI principles in mind. Yes, sir, that would be true.
Right. So again, that's why I want you to take a step back and not focus on Auto Highlighter for just a second, right? Because if that was the problem, I mean, so that's why I start off with what's the user problem, right? So what are they struggling with? And I pulled out two parts that you brought up. One, is this article something that I want to spend my time on? And then two, if it is, how do I spend my time on the relevant parts, right? Because I don't really, now I think that that's really where you have an opportunity to say, hey, let me read some research papers that's going to show, you need to read some research papers that's where you're going to find your concepts. You're not going to find your concepts in the Simon's 8 golden rules, or you're not going to find your concepts from Fitts law. It's not Fitts law. It's not Hicks law. Okay. It's not none of those. So I'll give you an answer right now. None of those. You have to read a research paper that's going to say, hey, they studied, for example, some of these guidelines that you saw in the AI paper, right? They are proposing these guidelines because they studied something similar to what you're trying to do. And you think, hey, if I could apply that to this domain, maybe we can address the problem, which is people don't know how to, whether the article they're going to read is relevant to them. And if it is, how to get to the important points. You should read other research papers that are talking about how to process information, give people the main components, other summarization papers, guidelines behind recommendation papers, something there, and you're going to apply that to this problem. Okay, so again, you got a good problem. We are saying, and this, you're not the only group, is that you all are trying to teach you to say, hey, when I say apply an HCI principle, you need to go read research papers that have studied problems similar to this, propose guidelines or principles, and you're going to take that and try to apply it to this domain to see whether you've improved on it. So it's not an interface improvement. It's not just, I want to make it, because again, that's why I said if Auto Highlighter did it, then the game would be over. Like, no, you see, you should say no, even if they improve the interface, still the major problem would still exist. No,
Right.
I want to solve that major problem using a different approach than auto highlighter. I'm not just trying to make auto highlighter 1.1 and then because they can make auto highlighter 1.1. Is that clear?
No, yeah, that definitely makes your message across clear. I just want to add one thing, and I completely understand and agree with your feedback, and we'll try to focus on these aspects before the final submission is due as well. One thing that we felt, so when I started off trying to explain some of the improvements we're making, the first thing I definitely mentioned was the interface. But one thing that we felt we were doing differently was that, as I said, highlighter is just highlighting text. You're still scrolling through a huge article. So one principle that we found, where visual reception is easier if there's no distractions. So we wanted to maybe go with an approach where we just completely eliminate unwanted text from the page, but keep relevant media in there. So you have supportive media, but you only have visual text, which would be a change from
Love
a
it.
concept.
Why do you think that's going to work? Is there some
Right.
research paper that you read?
Yeah, there were some I can't cite the specific ones,
Right.
but we'll try to make a good job of having that context included in our later report. So why we
Right.
should do that.
Right. You say, hey, I read these research papers and that's why we designed it. Not like you all sat around and go, you know what would be kind of cool? I don't really care what you think is cool or not, right?
Mhm.
Is I want you to be able to state a research backing to a decision.
Right.
And that's the lesson that we're trying to teach you in this class is not, if you see a problem with an interface, it's very easy just to laugh at the people who made it. You go, oh, that sucks so bad. It's so terrible. They're idiots. Well, they're not stupid. So what we are saying is, if you want to say, hey, I want to improve on this interface, I want to help solve this problem, it's not going to be a tweak. It's not going to be a shift around of just small things, because we can do that all day long. That won't. You want to say, hey, I read this research. You want to have a research supported solution that you're going to apply. Say, researchers found this, and I'm going to try to leverage their findings to improve this this domain, right? So yes, exactly what you said is to say, hey, we want to have an academic support for the approach that we are proposing to take moving forward, okay? And you can get that to us pretty soon. You don't have, yes, it needs to be in the final report, but even if you send us, let's say, a paragraph with a couple citations about how you're leveraging prior work to say, hey, prior work said that the most important things that people need to see are X, Y, and Z. So we're going to apply that to this system because everything out there doesn't have that. So it's more than just auto highlighter. Like you said, you also said something really important. You said, even if auto highlighter, all they do, yes, they do highlighting, but they still don't solve the crux of the problem, which is, for example, is this article worthwhile for me to read, right? And so you say, hey, I'm going to leverage this other research that's going to help me. We're going to try to apply these other guidelines, these other principles or concepts, and that's why we think this is going to improve the core problem. So yes, exactly what you said. But my point is, you can give us something really quick, and we can give you feedback. It doesn't have to be something very, very formal. Just send Mohan and I email, and we can give you feedback on that. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Just one more question here. Then just for Monday, since there is a expected recording of what we've done so far, and to get feedback, if we're not able to, if we just do the progress that we've made in terms of designing our interface, and we send that across for Monday, since it's not graded, is that fine? If it may take us a little more time to get you some of the answers that we've discussed today, we might not have them in time for Monday's feedback presentation. Would that be a detriment, or is that fine?
Well, I guess I'm not really sure what your question is, because
my question was that if our Monday feedback is essentially focused on the interface, since that's the approach we've been taking so far, is that fine for just the Monday milestone?
Yeah, sure. Since it's not, sure. Yeah, just turn in what you got.
Okay.
And I understand that things might change. We understand that, but that's the whole idea. So we hope everybody's project changes after Monday.
Right.
Not just yours. Okay. All right.
Well, thank you.
Yep. All right. Or is
I think the other team is not here.
the other team's not here?
No.
Okay, it's the same thing that I just want them to be able to say, hey, here's the problem. And again, I think that instead of talking about interface problem, future semester, figure out that what's the user's problem, and really getting at that and saying, hey, how are you going to solve the user's problem by getting literature to support your approach. But okay, all right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time. Thanks, Mohan, for getting everybody here and just trying to give you feedback so that we can. I mean, we're still in March, so there's still plenty of time. So we're trying to give you that feedback. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Have
you.
a great rest of your day.
You too. Have a good weekend.
All right.